Cooper Howard, the Ghoul. I think that one of the most interesting psychological aspects is this fall from grace, him being this amazing hero that everyone looks up to, then becoming someone that is reviled, looked down upon, and how does he handle that? So we're going to be cutting out some of the graphic parts of the video, but if you want to catch all of them, you can catch them on Nebula, where we'll have the uncensored version.
You are a vault dweller. But if you're going to survive, you need to start acting like a surface dweller. The question is, will you still want the same things when you have become a different animal altogether?
And I think that that wraps up this entire interesting psychological evolution of Cooper Howard. He starts off as this hero. He's larger than life. Everyone loves and adores him. What happens to us psychologically when we go from being this thing, this idealized version of ourselves that holds these values true, and then we have to do whatever we can to be able to survive? For anyone that's ever been through that, looked at as the best and then fallen from grace in a really strong way, it is exceptionally difficult on our egos psychologically, but also what parts of our personality do we sometimes lose in that process of having to survive in a really difficult world where it truly is dog eat dog? I don't know if that was too soon. Sorry, dog meat. But we end up going through all of these difficulties, and I think that that's really pretty fascinating.
There's an old Mexican eulogy. Feo, fuerte y formal. I'll give you 2 out of 3 on that front. Do I really have to kill him?
Cuts?
I think that that scene's really important because it shows the sense of honor that Coop has. One, for himself, but also for his image. It matters to him what he's projecting and what other people are going to take from it.
I'm the sheriff, right? Well, why can't I just arrest a guy like I normally do? That's what I do.
The audience, they want to see that even a good man as yourself can be driven
Yeah,
too
I understand
far
that, but that's
sometimes.
not really my thing. You know, Emil, that's not what I do.
Please.
Right.
Because out here, it's just you, your gun, and your personal code.
And he wants people to know that he has a sense of honor, that he's a sheriff, and sheriffs should mean something. They should mean doing the right thing, even when it's difficult.
Stop, please! My dad, he's an overseer. He got taken by raiders, and I need the head to get him back. If you help me find him, he'll do whatever you want.
This is a whole different side of Coop. Like, this is almost the opposite of who he was before. So now he's dipping someone into the water, not for torture, but as bait, which I don't know if that's any better or not. But I think that it's really interesting. That it's really easy to judge, and we're often in this place of I would do better, and these are the wrong things, and even in difficult situations, I'd make the right decisions. The Ghoul is there to survive, and I think that it's a really hard thing. I think that we often are very hypocritical about what we would do if we were put into very difficult situations, and different cultures, different situations have a different set of rules. And I think that that's the one thing that Cooper Howard is actually really good at. Learning to play by the rules so that he can end up winning.
Torture is wrong!
A particular study came out, and it said that torturing a person don't do It made sense. I mean, a man hurts me, I wouldn't want to do him any favors. And yet the practice of torture failed to vanish from this earth. In fact, I personally noticed a decided uptick.
Torture actually does not work psychologically to get the truth. Often people use torture more to break people, break their spirits, and for a lot of people to be able to unleash their own anger and enjoying hurting others. But actually to get viable, usable information, torture has been found to be really ineffective. Sometimes you get some information that sometimes can be good, but it's hard to find out which one's good information and which one is just, I'm gonna say anything so you stop hurting me.
Then why are you doing this?
Well, I ain't torturing you, sweetheart. I'm using you as bait.
Also, the cool thing is that he's not mindless, he's not thoughtless, and he's not cruel without any reason, in this case at least. He's doing this to serve a purpose, to get something, and he's able to debate really analytically, thoughtfully, when someone speaks to him. And I think that that makes a villain, the bad guy or the anti-hero in this case, much more interesting, because it's not just a black or white situation. You're intrigued by what are their motivations, truly.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have just let you use me as bait in a poison river.
I really like that scene because he's so upset. So he just lost the head that he was going for. And all of his medication to keep him in control is broken. Yet you could tell that he's like, you know what, she has a little bit of a point. And that means that he's just not a cold-blooded killer. He hasn't lost all of those parts of his humanity. There's still part of Coop inside of the Ghoul. It's often this battle when you know that you have to do certain things in order to survive. How much does he still know that it's wrong what he's doing? How much does he still hold on to his humanity through all of this?
You can't treat people like this.
Yeah, why's that?
Because of the golden rule. Do unto others as you'd have done unto you.
And I think that this was the first turning point. She's now patronizing him with words that were his words. He was the poster boy, literally, for all of these thoughts and rules. And so to have it thrown back at him when he's the one that pretty much started it, I think that it causes him a cognitive dissonance of what is the right thing to do. And I think it also makes him feel really angry because all of those rules did not serve him. He did the right thing and everything still went to hell. He's been reviled by all of these rules and used them to make him feel like a bad person. Probably a lot of that is because he does, and he probably has an inner dialogue that questions that.
Those Cooper's digestion real slow. You got time.
But he's not so upset that he's not still analytical. When we get really, really angry and frustrated, or if you're overly reactive because of something, you couldn't have done that analytical math. He's upset at her. She kind of offended him. She insulted him, saying that you're not a good enough person. You shouldn't do these things. Yet he was still able to do the math of, you know what, strategically, this is what I have to do. And I think that that's one of the coolest parts of the Ghoul. He's still always thinking of the main objective, even though sometimes his emotions may be saying otherwise. So he really does have a very strong analytical nature.
Where are we going? What about the head? I need the head to get my dad back.
Yeah, well, the wasteland's got its own golden rule.
Oh, what's that?
Thou shalt get sidetracked by bull every goddamn time.
It's just like such a video game comment. Like, it so happens that every time you're trying to do the main quest, there's all these side quests that you have to do. And for completionists such as me, like, you really want to get those done too. So you're constantly having to do other things and keep in mind all of the other stuff that you have to do.
Sir. Sir, please. I need water. Please. Please.
First thing is, that was like such a turd blossom move that he did. I actually thought to myself before that he usually did things that were quite analytical, that everything pretty much served a purpose. And it seems though that his feelings towards Lucy after she started throwing about this hypocrisy and the golden rule, then now he has a lesson that he wants to teach her, that there's a different golden rule here, that it is survival of the fittest, that you have to be smarter than anything else, and sometimes you have to get your hands dirty. And I think that it's interesting that they have the studio tour in the background and we look at the Ghoul in the foreground as we have this difference of interplay inside of him. And it could also be that feeling of guilt and regret, but it seems more to be an animosity towards her, trying to flout the things that he once believed himself and to say, you're not that different from me.
Water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink. Ain't much stage cleanup here, Volty. You'll see.
Is that what happened to you? Radiation?
Something like that.
And definitely not just the radiation, but living for 200 years under extreme conditions where it's kill or be killed definitely changes you. You have to sometimes put aside different sets of values because if you didn't, you might not survive. And in a way, I think that he's pushing away his humanity by trying to say, don't expect anything more than me. Because once that expectation comes into play, I think that it actually will become difficult for him. Because I don't think that he's changed as much as he would like to believe that he has. You can look into his face and still see that there's a certain amount of pain looking at the past and what he used to represent and how he has to kill it, get rid of it. It also really hurts us when we have to do things that we no doubt still know that it's wrong. If this didn't bother him, if he truly had lost all of his feelings of humanity and his ties to the past and there were no regrets, he wouldn't have to shoot the face. It wouldn't cause him any feelings, right or wrong, good or bad. And that's how you know that something still is a wound for you. When bringing it up, being reminded of it causes pain, makes you want to avoid it, or makes you angry. You have an emotional reaction, and he definitely had an emotional reaction, and I could see the pain on his face when he looked at it, looked at who he was, all the ideals he had to get rid of, and who he used to represent.
On behalf of the whole Vault-Tec family, we wanted to say how delighted we are that Barb could use her connections to get to you.
You know, I've never done an advertisement before in my life. But then again, my wife has never asked me to. So. Yeah. Okay. Over here?
I think that's really interesting as well. And I think that that's a really important scene because it shows that this is something that he doesn't believe in. He doesn't believe in advertising using his brand, his name, to be able to advertise for things. But it also shows that he will put apart his own values for his family, for the people that he cares about. And I think that that's one of the motivating factors for the Ghoul.
My name is Roger. My name is Roger. My name is Roger.
Hey, Raj.
We often try to remind ourselves, especially when we feel we're losing parts of ourselves, we often use things to remind ourselves, tie us to the past, to ourselves, to our memories, and it can be really effective. We can use objects, scents, times, but I think it's really sad, this repeating of his name in hopes to try to keep remembering his identity and who he is.
Fancy seeing you out here. You up for that bounty too, huh?
Yep.
He's usually pretty honest and direct with everything that he wants and says. He kind of still has a code, a sense of honor that he goes about, and rarely does that deal with lying. Even if it's a really dire situation, he pretty much says it as it is.
How you feeling?
No.
Like, what a thoughtful question. And I think that for him, this is the cautionary tale. This is what can happen if he doesn't get his medicine. And with all of the medicine being gone, that's the urgency that he faces right now. But still, to be able to ask how you're doing when you're going through this situation and you're yourself going through all of this stress. But I also think that he's assessing how far Roger is and how far he's going into the process of turning.
You know, it's hard out here. Dang, some of these can be so unkind.
It's interesting because the talking of the discrimination that they have to go through because of the way that they look, we are very judgmental over the ways that things look. Even small imperfections on fruit, that will be the fruit that we don't choose, even though it will taste exactly the same. It's interesting because psychologically, that was a way for us to be able to take a look at possible genetic defects or things that were wrong. But we take it way too far. But there's definitely some pieces to that that make us have an inherent bias. And we have to be really cautious of us being biased and judging someone just on the way that they look. It also shows that fall a little bit more clearly of how Cooper Howard was truly a movie star that everyone looked up to and wanted to talk to and get more information from and just spend time with, to someone that is looked at with horror. It's like expectational debt. When you start off so high, you just fall down so low because there's such a huge difference, and that can cause a lot of feelings of aggression, depression, anxiety, and a change in our identity of who am I now and what is my place in the world. If you actually are used to failing and you're used to not having to deal with people's affection to make you feel good, that's not your dopamine hit, losing that doesn't hurt as much. Failure and not relying on things that are ephemeral or can be taken from you, like your looks, actually inoculates you against other bad things that can happen. It often can make you much more resilient. But that doesn't mean that if you have that, you're not resilient, but you really don't want to rely your feelings of self-esteem or goodness or happiness on things that are not really substantial or internal to you. It's a much more stable self-esteem to have intrinsic self-esteem about who you are and your character traits than extrinsic self-esteem, how everyone else sees you, your money, or your title.
Yeah, you don't have to have any vials, do you? Just one little puff, and I'll be back on my feet. You know I'm good for it.
I'm sorry, Roger. I'm all out.
That's okay.
And I love that look that he had to Lucy of like, do you see what he's going through? To feel the empathy. And that shows his own empathy in this journey and also his understanding of what he's gonna have to do. And he gets down to his level. He doesn't stay standing. And that's a really important way to be able to show an alliance and a connection, empathy for someone else. And I think that he looked over to Lucy to say, do you kind of get it now?
I did okay. 28 years since I first started showing. You've outlasted us all. How long since you first started wastelanding?
A long time.
It's a lot of vials.
Well, I've always been good at making money, Roger.
And that shows how strong his drive for survival is. To be able to survive 200 years, to be able to get vials, to get money, and to live in an area where everything is barren, where people are all desperate. People, when resources are plentiful, are really kind and thoughtful. But when resources become scarce, that's when people can do whatever they have to survive. And it becomes much more dangerous, where people become more dangerous often than the elements.
Remember how good food used to taste?
Blamco mac and cheese.
Ice cream and apple pie.
Hot damn! Apple pie! You know, my mom used to...
I actually think that that's one of the most beautiful moments for the Ghoul. I think that when you first take a look at it, it seems like he's just being cruel and he's doing this for jerky. I'm just saying it because that's what he called it, so that's what it is. But really, he wanted Roger's last moments to be happiness, so he distracted him by thinking about something that brought him joy. And only when he didn't look at him, when he was able to remember all these happy moments, that's when he killed him. And so I think that him not allowing him to turn and become this monster is actually a huge kindness that he did. He put him out of his suffering and made sure that he was happy and didn't have any fear before he went. So I think that that shows a sweetness that the Ghoul still has. And also you can see how much it bothered him that he was forced to be put in this position, to do something that was a difficult thing to do, but that he knew was right anyways.
Why'd you do that? You're sick.
It ain't all canned peaches and marmalade left up here, sweetheart. Sometimes, fella's gotta eat a fella.
You know, my vault has endured hardship too, in the Great Plague of 77.
I hate when people do that, when they try to, you know, explain that they also understand difficulties when it's not even close to the same thing. And just kind of funny because it shows her naivety of how she really doesn't understand how difficult it is on the surface in comparison to a vault.
Everyone had to quarantine. They couldn't work the farms together. People starved. My dad dropped to 128 pounds, and he still refused to do anything like this. What? What's so funny?
Well, that's what people say they did and what they really did.
And that's completely true. We create our own narratives to kind of Make sure that we don't look that much like the bad guy. Often we can do it so well that we actually believe it ourselves. And everyone, even though you may not want to believe it, is capable of doing horrible things. Horrible things if put into specific enough situations. And in Lucy's case, it's really ironic, her feelings about this.
Well, I bet your daddy was first in line at the cookout. I bet he had a bill with a drawing of his neighbor's on there.
How do you live like this?
This is the turning point for him, where he was annoyed with her and when she was patronizing. Now that she's being so hypocritical and acting upon her high horse that she is better than this, that she would never do it, and that she sees him as vile and abhorrent, that's when he really feels like she needs to learn the hard lessons, that you are no better. And he has a purpose in his mind that is just as noble as hers.
Well, one good question deserves another. Why am I doing all the work? Now, come on, Vaulty. Jerky don't make itself.
And I think that that's what that scene is about her seeing the harshness, the reality of this world, the difference between the vault, and to see that she also has to get her hands dirty in order to survive.
Now you get me. How does that golden rule drive with what's going through your head right now?
What are you?
Oh, I'm you, sweetie. You just give it a little time.
And that's that fight for humanity right in front, because he literally was her. Just give it a little bit, a lot in this case, of time. That need, when we have those innate needs, if you've ever been so thirsty that you will drink almost anything, that's absolutely true. Even radioactive water, people will drink salt water even though they know that that will make them eventually really sick. And other things as well.
Where you think you going? You ain't going nowhere. There you are, you little killer. Now that right there is the closest thing we've had to an honest exchange so far.
Am I the only one that thought he was going to eat it? And that kind of thought of this is the way that the world is. It's an eye for an eye. You do to me, you do to someone else. Which she had said before, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have to do unto you. So I think that this was his way of showing that there are different golden rules. And right here, sometimes you will do horrible things in order to survive.
2 months supply of owls, exchange 1 female, mint condition. Near mint condition.
Like even that, he's honorable. He's honest with what he's doing. When he goes through something, he just says it. He could have just said, like, mint condition, but he did not want to because that wouldn't have been true.
You don't get these. You turn into one of those? That how it works?
I may end up looking like you. I'll never be like you. Golden rule.
And that's a really hard thing when you used to hold a certain value and someone else shows you who you used to be, how you used to act. Even though this world is difficult, I think that for the Ghoul, this went a long way to who she is and her character. And I think that made him change his mind a little bit about how patronizing she was a little bit earlier. That she's different than most of the other people because she's been secluded and been fortunate enough to be able to do things a little bit differently and keep him safe, even though he cut off her finger and then tried to sell her. I think that it makes him think of a better time and a better version of him, of who he would like to be if he could. And so I think that that brings back some of the pieces of his old values also, possibly.
There's an old Mexican eulogy. Feo fuerte y formal. I'll give you 2 out of 3 on that front. I hope you like the taste of lead, you commie son of...
And those reminders is again of who he was before, the fight that he had over killing him or not killing him, and that sense of honor and dignity that he used to have, and how he's now reflecting upon his behaviors going forward. And you see him going through the movements that he went through before. It was kind of funny because he felt like the finger's missing, but that also works through. We go through watching someone else do something. We go through the muscle memory of what we did beforehand. It kind of activates all of our mirror neurons, our neurons of mimicking behavior. So it brings him back to that time and place because he's watching himself, movements he's done beforehand, and you can see him remimicking them. But that can also go to linking also belief systems and thought patterns that he used to have. And I think that that's his turning point of seeing really the ghoul's humanity. And I think that I am gonna do the other video on a ghoul and his dog instead of a man and his dog, because I think that that's a really interesting video, and I think that the dog in a lot of ways is kind of the links back to his humanity. And if you enjoyed this video, it really does go and help support me if you'll just click that button to subscribe. I would love to get to 300,000 subscribers, so every click does matter to me. It does mean a difference. So thank you so much for watching the video, and hopefully you click subscribe. So you can let me know what your thoughts are on the series of Fallout and character the Ghoul. Is he your favorite villain? If so, why? And did I miss any scenes that you wished I'd put in? And we will be showing the gory version of this video on Nebula, so if you want that, check out Nebula. You'll see the link in the description. And hopefully I'll see you in the next video.